Over the last year at MOFILM, we've done some really exciting things in the sort of next generation filmmaking space. We've done some really exciting drone projects, and increasingly we're getting into the VR space. Stuff we're very proud of. And so we have a great panel today to talk about the various components of drone filmmaking, VR filmmaking, 360-degree filmmaking. And so if I could just welcome everyone else up onto the stage, and we could take a seat, and then I'm going to ask the guys at the back there to play a video of a project we did for Emirates Airlines and Boeing, where we captured 20 of their tourist destinations around the world using drones. And so I think it's the biggest drone video marketing project in history. About 80% of the video was captured using DJI products, and so we've got Michael here from DJI. But yeah, really excited. So if we could just kick off with the video, please. Great. So as I said, a project we're very proud of. These were just meant to be on YouTube, but now they're in all Emirates flights, and they're putting them in all their lounges. And I think just a great example of new technology done really well, and a really great product at the end. So as I say, something we're very proud of. So I'm going to ask our panel to introduce themselves. Starting on my left, over to you, John.
John Landau, film producer. I produce Campus Man. That was my first movie. I also produced Avatar and Titanic and Dick Tracy and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and a few other movies. So.
Over to you, Michael.
That's all he needed to say.
Well, thanks for stealing the thunder on that one.
And I use drones all the time. Okay, now it's your turn.
I'm Michael Shabun. I'm a marketing manager with DJI Global, and we manufacture the drones that these gentlemen use for their amazing movies.
My name's Andy Stack. I like drones. Formerly, I was at YouTube for the last 6 years, working with running products for the creator side and bringing emerging technology that was coming out of YouTube and Google and surfacing that first with our top creators at the YouTube space, and led our YouTube's content strategy for VR and 360 last year. And I recently left and currently continuing to work with brands and creators for creating great 360 content.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy. So I thought a really great place to start. John, you obviously, as you said, made Avatar. I guess at the time it was one of the sort of most interesting new technologies in the world. And seeing we're talking about new technologies, I thought perhaps I could give you a minute to just talk about what that was like right at the bleeding edge of technology as it was evolving, as it was happening, and then incorporating that into a sort of feature-length film.
When people think about Avatar and technology, oftentimes they think the technology we were waiting for was the 3D technology. It wasn't. That had nothing to do with it. We were waiting for technology that would allow us to create emotive and engaging characters using computer-generated effects. Because movies are about the close-up. They're not about the environment you're in. They're not about anything else. If the close-ups don't work, your movies don't work. So our focus was, how do we create an avatar or a Na'vi character that could be compelling and emotional? And for that, we looked at CGI technology. Jim wrote Avatar originally back in 1995. we waited a full 10 years before I looked at the landscape of what was going on, and I went to Jim, who wanted to do another film at the time, and said, Jim, I think we're ready to be the impetus to push this technology to finally make Avatar. And I think it's important when you're looking at technologies, what you want to do is you want to be ahead of the wave. Because to make a surf analogy, if you're ahead of the wave, you'll catch the wave, and that wave will take you for a long ride. But if you're on top of the wave, you could fall down the backside and you miss the wave. So we try to look at technology to help us tell stories that could not otherwise be told. And I think oftentimes people make the mistake, they see a technology and then they look to create a story for that technology. We do the reverse. We create the stories we want to tell and then go in search of the technologies that will enable us to do that.
Fascinating. So I guess, I mean, talking about riding the wave of technologies, one of the things which has been most revolutionary over the last 5 years is drones. If you go back 5 years ago, they literally hardly existed, and if they did, they were super expensive and not very capable. And today, they're super capable and very inexpensive. Michael, sitting within DJI and seeing this incredible revolution happening around you, what sort of things are you most interested in terms of the new capability of those devices? What's the sort of most exciting part of that for you?
Sure, thank you. So, as you said, drones just in the last few years have come a long way in terms of the technology and the power. And one of the most innovative things is that, we're now eliminating the risk of pilot error, and we're focusing on creating semi-autonomous and autonomous machines that can essentially mimic what professional cinematography tools are doing in the field. But not only that, they're becoming more affordable, they're becoming easier to use, and they're becoming more powerful. So this little machine right here weighs just under 3 pounds and has a 4K camera on it and can fly for 30 minutes at a time. 5 years ago, you couldn't even dream of something like that. This is obviously the staple, and the machines get they get larger, they get more powerful, and they get fully customizable. And I think what we're going to be seeing is a lot of these tools are going to have dynamic range. They're going to have the ability to report real-time data to the end user, and they're going to be able to impact both budgets and crew and efficiency, and actually give producers, like John, the ability to put money elsewhere without having to pay a super large amount of money for, let's say an aerial crew. Not to say that helicopters, are obsolete, which they're absolutely not, but if you're looking at a drone, it's got such a dynamic range. You can go low to high, you can punch in, you can go super low, and you can create a whole new set of shots that you weren't even imagining a few years ago. And I think it's just a really exciting time because we're leveling the playing field with all creators, and we're giving these people the tools to bring their creative visions to life.
And you have much less prop wash. No, that's a factor when you talk about coming down low.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
I mean, one of the most interesting things you were talking to me earlier about is the gimbal, right? Before the gimbal was invented, all of these videos had visible vibration in them. How's that? It must have absolutely changed everything, I guess.
Yeah, the way they started was with a simple flight controller, which is the brains of the drone that controls the direction, the speed, the altitude, and reports on all real-time data. But after that was put in place and the drone was able to hold stable, how do we get that smooth, amazing shot? And it was really the advent of the 3-axis gimbal. And the way it works is the drone can essentially move along a 3-axis orbit, and it'll stabilize the camera no matter which direction you fly in. So, you can be anybody. You could be somebody who has no flying skills at all, or you can be a world-class pilot, and you'll essentially get the same quality of footage throughout.
Awesome. So, Andy, you've had experience in both the VR space, the 360-degree video space, and the drone space. But let me ask you about what's happened in the last sort of 3 years in the VR and 360-degree space, which has allowed such revolutionary change. You can't walk down the street here without seeing someone with a VR demo going on. It's obviously like the thing in the front mind of all marketers today. What are those sort of evolutions which have happened in the last 3 years which are most interesting to you?
Right. So I think one thing to keep in mind is that the word VR is thrown around like very, very loosely, and what I've used to kind of explain to YouTube and YouTube creators is that you have a progression. You've got a crawl, walk, and run, and so crawl is is the ability for you to have like a magic window of viewing spherical video. You are fixed, but you're able to pivot around and change your viewing angle. And then walking would be the degree of some movement within the space, a small amount of control. And then run would be something that's fully interactive, possibly not live action capture, but run on a gaming engine. So with that as a bit of a background, what I've seen that has been really interesting over the last year or so, while I was at YouTube, we launched the ability to show 360 videos on the playback of YouTube, and so that allows you on the mobile phone. If you guys haven't seen this yet, if you search for 360 video on YouTube on the mobile phone, this is what we call magic window. You can change your perspective by simply doing that. I'm sure pretty much everyone knows that by now, hopefully. But the really interesting thing that we've seen over the last year is recognizing that, well, it's not linear storytelling as we used to know about it. This is completely new. So it's about experience. It's about trying to set the viewer in an experience. And so we've seen people trying to translate existing linear stories into 360 or VR, and it doesn't work very well. Conversely, I've seen a young French film student, 19 years old, produce some amazingly fantastic experience within 360 and VR. So there've been the advent of some cameras that have made this a lot more accessible. So you've got something around the 300 to 400 price range. You can get something like the Ryko Theta, which will allow you to capture 360 without having to do any stitching. And if you're shooting for the highest quality that YouTube will allow playback for, which is 4K, there's some rigs around $1,000 that will allow you to do that, and some require stitching. So as you mentioned, the costs are coming down, and there are about at least half a dozen very good quality cameras on the market that allow pretty much anyone to be able to experiment with creating 360 video right now.
Great, thanks. So we're seeing this incredible evolution happening at the moment, far more capable at a far lower cost. In terms of the use cases which you were discussing there, John, what sort of use cases? So we were talking earlier, John, not 100% behind VR in certain use cases, but behind it in others. What sort of stuff do you think makes sense in the context of VR, and what doesn't make sense in the context of VR?
I think too often times people in our industry are trying to look at it as a different way of telling narrative stories. And I think it's the exact opposite of telling a narrative story. I think what we do when you work with a director like Jim Cameron, he wants to compose a shot to tell you where to look, not to have you choose where to look and miss that little subtle moment that he was playing. So I look at it as an ancillary opportunity, that when you create a movie like Avatar, where it's a whole universe, to give people an opportunity through VR to explore that world in a different fashion, to go to Pandora, to walk through Pandora, to see it, to maybe become a driver of an amp suit or fly a Banshee or do those type of things around the planet and see it in the 360 capability. I think as it relates to that, one of the keys that separates what we do in the theaters from what people experience in the gaming world, and they've gotten closer, but there's still a gap in terms of the visual fidelity. And I think it's important to have in the VR space, if you want that true virtual experience, a photographic environment. And right now there's some technology shortcomings in being able to create that for everybody on every device.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
So to that point, so I would agree with that. However, the experience that video creators want to elicit from the audience isn't necessarily something that is completely perfect from the visual sense. Setting up an environment to show to convey empathy is extremely effective, and what we've seen, and the video quality could be relatively simple as long as you're able to convey the story. So that there's a studio called Specular Theory that has created a series called Perspective, which is it's absolutely amazing. The most recent one they did was you could watch a scene from 4 different people, from 4 different perspectives, and there's 2 brothers who are black, and there are 2 police officers, and there's a confrontation, and the police officer shoots one of the kids. And so you could look at this from any perspective and be like, oh, well, clearly he was out of line, or clearly he did something wrong. But you can watch that 4 times over from 4 different perspectives, and you can totally understand from each perspective why each person chose the action that they did, and it just ended unfortunately. So so there's some really interesting ways of being able to scale, empathy without having to worry about trying to make sure you're flying or you've got the best time.
So what was the visual resolution or quality of that?
So it was 4K.
Photographic?
Yes.
So they photographed people on the street?
Well, it was live action capture.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool, yeah. So, I mean, that's fascinating. So, really interesting storytelling capabilities, which you can sort of feel more of what's happening than you ever could, sort of with just sort of flat video. I mean, Michael, listening to that, I think what's fascinating is the storytelling sort of applications which come about because drones exist. What are your sort of best examples? If you were to say, what is my very best use case of drone video capture today? I sometimes look on YouTube and I see these incredible videos of surfing where you have a drone sitting somewhere where nothing else could ever have captured video in the past before. What else is sort of super exciting to you in this space?
Well, it's interesting. First of all, the applications are essentially limitless. We're learning about new ones every single day. And I think it's interesting to start off by saying that, we're essentially paving the way to go where no man has gone before. So, for example, we were the first ones to fly a drone over an active volcano bed and live stream the whole thing back to Good Morning America. And that's somewhere where a helicopter just purely cannot fly. I think most people associate drones with filmmaking, with TV film production, with music videos, and it certainly is upping the quality of traveling documentarians and people who don't have large budgets and shoestring budgets, and it's bringing everyone's work up a caliber. What most people don't realize is the other commercial side of applications of drones. So, for example, search and rescue teams are using our drones to literally save people's lives every single day. And without those tools, they can't get into those hard-to-reach places. And our tools are enabling them to, contact these people and find missing people and bring them back to their families. And I think that's the most valuable thing that, we're producing right now. Other industries that are benefiting from them, farmers in Kansas are using them to monitor their crops. And, they can literally point their cameras at a certain crop, and based on the color of the crop or the harvest, the drones can report back to their home automation systems and let them know that, this part of your crop is nutrient deficient. And they're even going so far as integrating it directly with home automation. And once the drone sends a signal back to the home circuit system, then the sprinklers will go on and the water certain parts of the crops that are malnourished. Insurance adjusters are minimizing risk for themselves, and they're sending the drones up to do rooftop surveys instead of having to climb up and potentially risk injuring themselves. Sports enthusiasts, like you mentioned, the surfers are using it. Anybody who's into action sports. So, if you name it, you can really think of it. A drone can, essentially be your best friend, and you can use it for a number of many different applications.
Okay. And I guess one of the interesting things is taking our 2 subject matters and sort of putting them together, right? So we've got drones happening on the one hand, and then on the other hand, we've got 360-degree video. I had a look at some headsets which allow you to fly through, real time as the drone is flying outside. You are navigating it through the headset. I don't know if anyone on the panel, Andy, do you have any experience in sort of the 360-degree drone space?
Yeah. So last year at VidCon, which is a very large video creator convention in Anaheim, we did 2 fun usage of drones with actually the same type of drone that Michael builds. So the first was we actually attached a a 360 camera rig to the bottom of one of these and flew it around following Toby Turner, who's a very popular YouTuber, and following him around as he was walking the convention area. And as soon as he walks around, of course, there's like a crowd of screaming teenagers that start to follow him. And so it provided this really, from a playback standpoint, a really interesting way. So there's no gimbal, right, in this case, because the camera's capturing absolutely everything. So you can, when you play it back, you can look anywhere you want. But I think the most sort of exciting and transformational thing that we did was at the concert. There was like one concert. There was 2,000 teenagers in front of the stage, and we did this short little quick activation to create a record setter world record of the largest indoor cell phone wave, in which we asked everyone to turn the lights on their cell phone, and when the drone would pass over, then they were supposed to raise their phones up. And so we captured that with video as the drone flew over, but it was also a clear visual indicator for what the whole audience was supposed to do. And so it was like 2,000 teenagers who didn't even expect to be suddenly part of a world record had a fantastic experience. And then watching the video was just absolutely stunning, seeing thousands of lights come on and come off from that vantage point.
Yeah, so lots of, incredible applications. John, sitting in Hollywood, is this something which there's a lot of energy being put into at the moment? Is there a lot of focus on it? Is anyone succeeding in any meaningful way?
I think right now it's too much of the fledgling stage for anybody to be succeeding. Everybody wants to figure it out, but I don't think anybody has done that yet. I think until they really stop trying to make it what we do in Hollywood and try how do we expand it, no different than people look at web portals, no different than people look at gaming or publishing. It's an ancillary opportunity for the products we make, and how can we use the incredible tools that are available to expand our universes. Okay,
and in your own view, do you think this is going to be a really big part of our future? Do you see VR headsets in all of our homes in the near future?
I make the analogy back to video games, that I think that gaming is a big part of our society. It's not in every home. It's not ubiquitous across different demographics and different ages. So I think there's going to definitely be a huge market for it. I don't think it's going to become ubiquitous.
Okay, fascinating. So to turn slightly to sort of the less exciting parts to talk about, when we did this Emirates project, one of the most difficult things we faced was legislation all around the world sort of unfolding as the project unfolded. So every country we went to, most of them didn't have legislation a year and a half ago when we started. Now pretty much all of them do, and depending on when you captured that film, depends whether it was legal or not. To Tom, our lawyer at the back, they were all legal. But let me ask you, Andy. In terms of legislation which surrounds VR to start with, and the sort of pitfalls and that sort of thing, there's obviously a lot of gray areas at the moment. Like, what is good, what is not good in this space? What is your view on that?
Well, I can't comment on legislation too much. Is that, or are you just talking about?
Let's just talk about the pitfalls, the good things, the bad things, in terms of.
Right. So one of the things that that we've learned, and I'm in the process of trying to find ways to be able to expand the training and tools and technology to other YouTube creators to make sure that we all create high quality 360 content. The biggest thing is, do not make your viewer sick. And the good news is that it's relatively easy to avoid that. We've done quite a bit of testing on our own and found out what makes you sick and what doesn't. And so the quick answer is that if you're holding a camera that's a 360 camera, you can move it, but you want to move it forward, back, and laterally. If you turn it, what really messes with your head is when you turn something and the viewer's head is not turning, but visually you see things change, then your inner ear says, whoa, something's wrong, or I'm drunk, or something's really strange. And then so you start to feel not so great. So just making sure that you've got a nice steady way of leading somebody through. And then also in terms of editing, one of the best practices is keep in mind that it's an experience. You're putting somebody in an environment, very different from telling a framed story. So when you put them in an environment, when you do a scene change, they need time to kind of orient themselves. Like, boom, okay, where am I? Oh, I'm flying above a castle. Okay, let me get a chance to look around. So making sure that you have longer time in between cuts is another tactic to make sure that you're actually conveying what's going on. So
I think it's really interesting. You use the term 360 content.
yes.
And I think that's a much more apropos term for the type of content you're talking about. I think people use this term virtual reality, and it suggests something that we cannot yet deliver. If I saw a demo of virtual reality where I was supposed to be on Mars, and I was allowed to walk on Mars, except Mars is rocky, and I was walking on a flat ground. The two don't connect with one another. So talking about content and saying, because you're building up an expectation. So if I'm going to see 360 degree content, that's one thing. If I'm going for virtual reality, it's another. Augmented reality is yet a third. So I think it's important how we refer to these things as well.
Right, and the important thing is understanding your viewer and the rule set that you're giving the viewer. If they're strapping on a headset and putting on headphones, then they're probably going to be expecting some degree, perhaps, of interaction. Clearly, if you put something in their hands as a controller, they're going to want to be interacting with what's going on. If they're just picking up a Google Cardboard and putting it to their face, then there's a bit of an understanding of, well, I'm not going to be walking around. I don't need to necessarily worry about that. So just keep in mind, there are varying levels of what you can do. 360 is the most accessible right now that brands and creators are experimenting with. But yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, so last question for you, Michael, before we come to a close here. Pretty much every time I go online, there's a new sort of headline around drones, whether it's a DJI flying into the White House or what it is. I mean, that must be a tricky place to be.
And any press is good press?
I mean, that must be an incredibly difficult place to be, right? There's, as I said, there's legislation all around the world happening all around you. People putting drones in places they shouldn't. What's that like from your side, from within DJI?
Yeah, so as with any technology, for the most part, it always outpaces the regulations. So it's a very exciting time right now where we as a society are able to impact a new technology and how it enters our consumer market space in our world and how we interact with it. And as the technology gets better and as it gets more affordable and as we create more autonomy, I think obviously the regulations will fall into place. And right now, as you mentioned earlier, there are different regulations in each region, by country, by state, by city. And as we progress, it'll be tightened up and we'll come out with a certain set of laws that will dictate the way we use these products. And the analogy is that, I obviously wasn't alive during this, but in the early 1900s, when cars and automobiles first came on the market, there used to be a guy that would have to stand 500 yards down the street with a gun, and he would have to shoot the gun and say, "There's a horseless carriage approaching." And look where we've come in 100 years, where we have self-driving cars at this point. And so the way that drones are evolving, with companies like DJI, with companies like Amazon talking about drone delivery, with companies, with hospitals all across the world looking at delivering necessary equipment and organs to people in need. You're looking at a complete revolution in the way we think about technology and the way we utilize it and incorporate it into our lives. You can see 10 years down the road, imagine losing your keys, and you think about it, and a little drone will buzz by and bring you your keys. And it's really amazing because we're now looking at this generation of being able to crowdsource technology. And the example is that DJI recently came out with a software development kit, and it opened the door for creators and imaginators to really put their best foot forward and say, well, no, this is how I want the technology to function, and this is how I'm going to build it, because personally, everyone has a different use case. So, right now we are standardizing this product, but you can go in, you can hack it, and you can program it to function the way you want it. And it's actually incredible. And if you look at 2-3 years down the road, I really see most people having their own personal drone, but it's going to be used for a variety of different things.
Thanks, Michael. So, as you all know, at MOFILM, we have a community of filmmakers. I think right on the cutting edge, trying to use the newest, most sort of the latest technologies to achieve what they have to for brands. I guess, John, as a sort of closing thought, to the sort of emerging filmmakers, younger filmmakers looking to get into this space, do you have any sort of thoughts, advice in that space?
I think it's a very exciting day and age because technology has put the tools in everybody's hands to become filmmakers. And I just say go out there and do. But remember, what you're creating is not for yourself. What you're creating is for the audience that you define that you want to reach. So if you're not reaching that audience, hear their feedback. Listen to why you're not reaching it. See what's working for them. And go try it again. And where art is concerned, art is a leap of faith. So failure has to be an option. Don't be afraid to fail. Go out there and do, and you'll be defined as much by how you get up from your failures as you are by your successes.
Awesome, awesome. Andy, you're building a space for these things to come together, 360-degree video, VR, and all that sort of stuff. And you're inviting filmmakers to come in and sort of test and sort of prototype in your environment. Is that correct? Any sort of closing thoughts from you?
Well, yeah, I'm a chairman of a nonprofit arts organization in LA, and we have a house that we've converted into like a conservatory where we do artist residencies. YouTubers have done some artist residencies there, and it's a place where creators can take risk with new technology, with stuff outside of their comfort zone of what they normally do. And so we've been starting to bring more and more new types of technologies available to creators there. So I would, building on what John said, I would encourage creators and filmmakers to take risk. Great art comes from being able to take risk. And when it comes to 360 and VR, technology is a means to an end, right? It's a way of achieving what you want to achieve. So don't lose track that you're either trying to tell a story or create an experience. So for John, it could be creating a fantastic ancillary or shoulder content experience around his next Academy Award-winning film, or its own art form. It is a new art form that you can just create your own experience to bring your audience into. So it's exciting.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy. So a little bit later, Michael and his team are going to power up the latest in the DJI range, which we're very excited to see here. Really is hot off the press, right? A few weeks old.
Brand new. This is the latest technology in all the drone space.
Fantastic. So Michael's going to power it up here, and we're going to show you a bit of the functionality, and we're going to try and do a live stream to this screen here. And if it doesn't pop up there, then
360?
Just spin it around.
But yeah, I just wanted to thank this incredible panel. Really excited to have had you all here, and thanks very much for your time, and thanks all for listening.